You have now seen the laws that govern power and the fatal mistakes that strip men of it. To defend yourself is to admit weakness, to break the illusion of strength. To remain silent is to command respect, to plant fear, to let mystery elevate you above the reach of ordinary men. To counterattack is to seize control, to dictate the field of battle, to silence with deeds what no words could erase. And to control the narrative without speaking is to master the very perception of reality itself, forcing the world to craft your legend while you remain untouchable. The crowd will chatter, enemies will accuse, the weak will scramble to explain themselves. But not you. You will rise above the noise, cloaked in silence, armed with counterattack, and crowned by the narrative you alone control. This is how rulers are made, how legends are written, and how power endures when all else fades. Understand this law: the very act of defending yourself betrays uncertainty. The moment you open your mouth to explain why you are not guilty, why you are not weak, why you are not what your enemies say you are, you have already surrendered. You have confessed, without realizing it, that their words carry weight, that their accusations matter, that their judgment defines you. And in that instant, you lose more than their respect, you lose power. For power is never defended. Power is simply held. Look around you. In every sphere of life, from the corridors of politics to the boardrooms of business, from the intimate battles of family to the vast stage of society, you will see one truth repeated again and again. The weak explain themselves, the strong remain silent, the desperate plead to be understood, the powerful stand unmoved, needing no audience, needing no justification. The moment you defend yourself, you admit that your authority is fragile, that it requires explanation to survive. But true authority is beyond explanation. It needs no words, only presence. Think of the rulers of history. Think of the emperors, the kings, the conquerors. When whispers circled them, rumors of cruelty, of treachery, of betrayal, did they rise to justify themselves before the mob? No. They allowed the whispers to grow until the whisperers lost their breath, until their critics appeared small, petty, and consumed by envy. To defend would have been to admit that the people's chatter could wound them. To remain silent was to prove they were untouchable. The ruler who defends himself lowers his crown, but the ruler who ignores his enemies forces the world to bow before it. And it is not only rulers. Consider the modern man who has built an empire in business, who has cultivated an image of strength and dominance. When rivals accuse him, when critics mock him, when the public clamors for a response, the wise man does not scramble to prove his innocence. He does not write letters of explanation. He does not stand behind microphones insisting upon his virtue. No, he keeps walking forward, building higher, striking harder. And what happens? The noise fades, because noise cannot compete with results. Words wither before action. And the man who never defends himself is the man who rises while others collapse beneath the weight of their own excuses. Why is defense weakness? Because it reveals fear. When you defend, you say, I am afraid you will believe the worst about me unless I explain myself. And what does this do? It hands control of your reputation to others. It tells the world that your worth is in their eyes, not in your own. This is the gravest error of all. For reputation is power, and to give it away is to surrender the throne. Defending yourself is the art of letting your enemies write the script of your life. Refusing to defend yourself is the art of tearing the script apart and forcing them to live in your silence. Ask yourself, why do children explain? Because they are at the mercy of parents. Why do workers explain? Because they are at the mercy of employers. Why do the powerless explain? Because they are at the mercy of everyone stronger than them. But the one who has authority, the one who commands the room, the one who holds the reins of power, never explains. He may clarify, but not defend. He may speak, but never justify. And there is a vast difference between the two. One bends to the judgment of others, the other speaks only to sharpen his command. Imagine you are accused of betrayal by an enemy. You could rise to your feet, sweat on your brow, plead your case before the audience. You could explain every word, every step, every action, desperately hoping they will see the truth. But in doing so, you reduce yourself to their prisoner, chained to their perception. Or you could rise, look upon them with calm contempt, and say nothing. Let the accusation float in the air like smoke with no fire. Let the silence gnaw at their minds. Let their own uncertainty consume them. Who appears stronger, the one who justifies himself, or the one who needs no justification? History tells us again and again, men who defend themselves are forgotten, but men who never bend remain etched into legend. Julius Caesar, when accused of ambition, did not stoop to protest his innocence. He seized power, and by seizing it, he silenced his critics forever. Napoleon, when called a tyrant, did not lecture about liberty. He crowned himself, placing the crown upon his own head without waiting for the Pope's approval. He defended nothing, he claimed everything. And by claiming, he proved his supremacy. You see, the world does not admire defense, it admires dominance. When you explain yourself, you beg for approval. But when you hold your silence, you declare that approval is beneath you. The crowd senses this. Even your enemies sense it. They may hate you, but they cannot ignore you. They may curse your name, they cannot diminish it. For the man who defends himself becomes small, but the man who refuses to defend becomes larger than life. Even in personal life, this truth reigns. When someone attacks your character, when they spread lies about you, when they question your motives, your first instinct may be to rush forward and clear your name. Resist it, for every word of defense you speak gives life to the accusation. Every explanation you offer waters the seeds of doubt. Instead, remain calm, remain silent, and let your actions thunder where your voice does not. Silence is not weakness, it is strategy. It is not retreat, it is warfare. It is not surrender, it is domination disguised as indifference. Understand this: defending yourself may protect your pride for a moment, but refusing to defend yourself protects your power forever. For pride is personal, but power is eternal. The wise do not waste energy proving their innocence. They use that energy to advance, to build, to dominate. And when they rise higher, their very success becomes the only defense they will ever need. Silence is the fortress of kings. It unsettles the crowd, it breeds questions in the hearts of enemies, and it commands the respect of allies. To remain unmoved while others throw their accusations is to hold a weapon more powerful than any sword, more cunning than any argument. For silence is not emptiness. Silence is a presence, a shadow that fills the room, a force that bends the will of those who cannot bear its weight. The man who does not speak is never truly silent. He is declaring, without words, that he cannot be shaken. When your enemy speaks against you, their greatest hope is that you respond. They want you to flinch, they want you to explain, they want you to waste your strength in proving them wrong. For when you speak in defense, you grant their words importance. But when you remain silent, you strip their accusations of air. They suffocate in their own noise, their anger echoing against walls that do not reply. In time, their passion burns out and their voice is reduced to nothing but whispers. Silence has destroyed them more thoroughly than words ever could. Why does silence breed fear? Because it cannot be predicted. Words reveal intention, but silence conceals it. When you do not answer your accuser, they begin to wonder, are you plotting against me? Do you not even care about this attack? Have I underestimated your strength? Every second you remain quiet, their imagination works against them, inventing threats, magnifying your shadow, turning you into something larger than life. And when men cannot measure your power, they fear it. Silence also breeds respect. The crowd that listens to accusations waits eagerly for your response. They expect protest, excuses, explanations. But when none come, they are confronted with something they did not expect: composure. They see that you are not disturbed, not desperate to be understood, not shaken by the arrows that have been hurled at you. And in that stillness, respect is born. For men admire strength, and silence is strength made visible. To hold your tongue when every nerve demands a reply is mastery over self, and mastery over self is mastery over power. Think of the courtroom where two men argue. One shouts, his voice filled with fury, his words tumbling over each other in a desperate bid to be heard. The other sits in silence, his eyes calm, his hands still. Who commands the room? Not the one who shouts, but the one who does not need to. Noise is the tool of the weak. Silence is the weapon of the strong. Throughout history, silence has been used as a shield and as a sword. When great leaders were accused, they often allowed their enemies to speak endlessly, never once lowering themselves into the mud of defense. The people grew tired of hearing accusations that went unanswered, for unopposed words soon sound hollow. Eventually, even the critics begin to question themselves. Why does he not reply? Does he not fear us? Have we wasted our strength? And doubt, like poison, begins to eat away at their confidence. Silence is the slow death of the enemy's certainty. Consider this in daily life. A rival mocks you before others, expecting you to retaliate. If you answer, the crowd witnesses a quarrel between equals. But if you remain silent, the rival looks like a fool shouting into the wind. His words cling to him, not to you. The silence you hold is not weakness, it is superiority. You show the world that you are above the insult, above the attack, above the need to justify. And soon, those who watch see you not as the accused, but as the master of restraint, the one who cannot be dragged into the mud by petty voices. Silence is not only about restraint, it is also about strategy. Every word you do not speak becomes an opportunity to act. While your enemies waste their strength in gossip, you conserve yours. While they argue, you prepare. While they spread lies, you build. And when the time comes, you strike, not with words, with actions so undeniable that they crush every whisper. Silence creates the space for decisive action, and decisive action silences all critics. There is also a psychological weapon hidden within silence. When someone accuses you and you do not respond, you place the burden on them. They must explain further, they must repeat themselves, they must work harder to convince others. And with each repetition, their argument grows weaker, their desperation more obvious. What once looked like a sharp attack begins to appear like obsession. They become prisoners of their own accusations while you stand untouched. Silence in this way, fend. It attacks without moving. Think of a lion surrounded by barking dogs. Does the lion snarl and bark back? No, the lion remains still, unbothered, secure in its strength. The dogs grow louder, but their noise does not wound the lion's dignity. In fact, the lion's silence magnifies its majesty, while the dogs reveal their weakness in every bark. So too must you be the lion. Let others bark. Let them exhaust themselves. Your silence will make them look smaller, while you grow larger in the eyes of all who watch. Silence is also a teacher. It reveals who among your circle is loyal and who is eager to believe the worst. When you do not rush to defend yourself, you see who stands firm beside you without needing explanations, and who turns away at the first whisper. Your silence exposes truth more effectively than any argument ever could. Words can be manipulated, but silence cannot be faked. It reveals character, it tests loyalty, separates allies from parasites. Remember, this silence is never absence, it is presence amplified. It is the unseen hand that guides perception, the invisible shield that protects reputation, the silent storm that terrifies enemies. When you master silence, you master one of the oldest and most dangerous weapons of power. It requires patience, it requires discipline, it requires the courage to allow others to misunderstand you. But in the end, it leaves you untouchable. The wise do not waste arrows on defending their walls. They launch fire into the camp of their enemies. To defend yourself is to accept the battlefield chosen by another. To counterattack is to dictate the war itself. Never justify, never explain, never lower yourself to the level of the accuser. Instead, move with force, move with authority, move with results that make their words irrelevant. For in the realm of power, the one who counters with strength, not excuses, is the one who seizes the throne. Who consider how men of weakness respond when they are challenged. They rush to clarify their innocence. They compose long speeches filled with apologies, assurances, and excuses. They bend their knee to those who question them, begging to be believed. But each word they speak digs their grave deeper. For the crowd sees not innocence but desperation, not strength but submission. The enemy has forced them into a cage of defense, and once inside, they are finished. Power is never proven by words, it is demonstrated through action. When you are accused, do not answer with explanations. Answer with achievements. If they call you incapable, succeed so greatly that their words shrivel into dust. If they call you weak, show strength so decisive that their accusations vanish. If they call you corrupt, grow so powerful that their voices are drowned in your shadow. Never play the game they set before you. Destroy the board entirely and write new rules with your victory. This is why counterattack is essential. Defense accepts the frame of the enemy. Counterattack reframes the entire battle. When you counterattack, you turn their weapons back upon them. Their accusation becomes their weakness. Their energy is wasted, while yours multiplies. You never stoop to meet them in their world. You force them into yours. Think of the generals of war. The ones who won were never those who sat behind walls, terrified of siege. The ones who won were those who marched into the enemy's territory, who carried the battle into their opponent's camp, who made the attacker regret ever raising a sword. So too in life, you must never sit passively defending yourself. You must act with boldness. Attack not with explanations but with victories so undeniable that your very presence silences the room. When a rival mocks you, do not waste your voice shouting back. Build higher than he ever could. When a critic questions your authority, do not justify yourself. Demonstrate authority with decisions that reshape the field. When whispers accuse you of weakness, appear not with apologies but with displays of force so striking that the whispers die in their throats. This is the law: never defend, always dominate. There is a deep psychology in this. When you defend, you validate the accuser. You tell the world that their attack was worthy of response. But when you counter with power, you invalidate them. You show that their voice is too small, their position too low, their accusation too weak to deserve your words. They become invisible, irrelevant, erased from the stage of power. Nothing humiliates an enemy more than being ignored and overshadowed by your triumphs. Imagine a ruler accused of being unfit to lead. If he stands before the people and swears that he is capable, the accusation grows stronger in their minds. But if he ignores the insult and instead wins a battle, signs a treaty, or crushes a rebellion, the people forget the accusation altogether. They remember only the victory. His counterattack has erased the need for defense. This is how power operates. It does not bend to words, it bends reality itself. In personal life, the same law applies. A man accused of dishonor does not waste time proving his loyalty with speeches. He proves it with unshakable deeds. A woman accused of weakness does not argue her strength. She shows it through resilience, through actions that cannot be denied. The world forgets words, but it never forgets actions. And those who master the art of counterattack understand that one act of dominance can silence 1,000 accusations. This is why counterattack is not merely about retaliation. It is about shifting the balance of power. The one who defends himself always lags behind, reacting to the moves of others. The one who counterattacks sets the tempo, dictates the rhythm, and forces the opponent to stumble. He creates fear, not from what he says, but from what he might do next. And fear, once planted, grows stronger than any explanation ever could. When an enemy tries to tarnish your name, you must become more than untouchable. You must become undeniable. Do not waste your time proving that you are not what they say. Show the world something greater, something beyond their reach. Show such overwhelming results that even your enemy begins to doubt his own words. Let him choke on the smoke of your success, while you stand in silence, towering above him. This is not just defense. This is conquest. History remembers those who counterattacked. It forgets those who defended. Alexander did not sit behind walls waiting to prove his worth. He marched across empires. Napoleon did not justify his ambition. He crowned himself emperor. Even in the realm of philosophy and thought, those remembered are not those who defended old truths, but those who struck boldly with new ideas. Defense may preserve the present, but counterattack shapes the future. To live without counterattack is to live always on the back foot, reacting, waiting, defending. To counterattack is to live as the architect of destiny, shaping the ground on which others must walk. And the secret lies not in words, but in presence, in achievements, in decisive acts that silence all doubt. In the court of power, words are wind, but victories are stone. Build with stone, and no storm of accusation can tear you down. The most cunning rulers have always known words are dangerous when spoken in haste, but deadly when left unsaid. To explain yourself is to surrender the story into the hands of your enemy. To remain above, untouched, and silent is to force others to craft explanations for you, and they will write legends, myths, and lies in your favor, or in fear of you. Either way, you remain the master of the narrative. Control of the narrative is the essence of power. Men believe not in what is true, but in what is told and repeated. To defend yourself is to hand the pen to your enemy, allowing them to write the tale that defines you. But to stay silent is to leave the page blank, and in that blankness, others will fill the void with their imagination. Imagination is more potent than truth, for men will always believe what they fear or admire more than what they can prove. The one who resists explanation forces the world to wonder, to speculate, to build myths that place him above the common man. Consider the rulers who built empires not only with armies but with silence. When accusations rose, they gave no reply. The court was left restless, the streets filled with whispers, but the ruler himself remained still. And what happened? Stories grew around him, some dark, some glorious, but all larger than life. Silence gave birth to mystery, and mystery gave birth to power. For the human mind cannot bear emptiness. It will fill silence with legends, and those legends will often serve you better than any defense you could have spoken. Why is explaining so dangerous? Because the moment you explain, you reduce yourself to the level of the accuser. You stand on the same ground, wrestling in the dirt with those beneath you. And the crowd, watching from a distance, cannot tell the difference between you and them. Both look small, both look desperate, both appear entangled in petty disputes. But when you do not explain, when you remain untouchable, you tower above the crowd. Your silence makes you appear sovereign, separate, different. You are no longer one among many. You are the one they cannot measure, the one whose motives are hidden, the one who cannot be pinned down. Control of the narrative is never in the words you speak, it is in the words you deny. Every statement you give can be twisted, every defense reshaped, every argument dismantled. Silence cannot be twisted. It cannot be reshaped. It cannot be dismantled. It stands like an immovable stone, and around that stone others must build their fragile towers of speculation. And in their desperation to explain you, they reveal more about themselves than they do about you. You remain the enigma, and the enigma always holds power. Look at how great figures in history are remembered. Those who defended themselves endlessly are forgotten, reduced to footnotes, their words buried under the weight of time. But those who stayed silent at key moments remain legends. The silence of a king after an accusation, the silence of a general before a battle, the silence of a leader when his enemies demanded answers. That silence echoes longer than words ever could. It becomes a symbol, a story retold in awe. And myth is stronger than fact. The crowd is easily swayed by mystery. They admire what they cannot fully know. They are drawn to the figure who reveals little, for scarcity creates value. The man who speaks too much spends his power like a fool spends gold, until nothing remains. The man who withholds, who lets silence do the work, is seen as rare, valuable, untouchable. The world begins to paint him as greater than he truly is, and this illusion becomes more powerful than reality itself. He controls the narrative without lifting a finger. Even in personal life, this law is absolute. When you are accused, when you are questioned, when someone demands you explain, resist. For their demand is not innocent. It is a trap. They want you to reveal your thoughts, your motives, your weaknesses. They want you to open the door so they may walk in and rearrange the story to their benefit. But if you remain silent, they are left outside, staring at the closed door, inventing their own theories. And in time, those theories consume them more than any defense could. Silence keeps you untouchable. Control of the narrative also means understanding timing. Speak only when your words cannot be used against you, and only when they reinforce your dominance. Until then, remain silent and let your actions speak instead. A single decisive act will shape the narrative more forcefully than 1,000 explanations. Silence, followed by undeniable action, creates a story no enemy can rewrite. They may slander, they may accuse, they may scream into the air. The people will only remember the action, not the words. The great strategist knows this truth. Men do not follow explanations. They follow strength. They do not cling to arguments. They cling to images. And silence creates the most powerful image of all. The image of the man who cannot be shaken, the man who cannot be touched, the man whose mysteries are greater than the attacks of his enemies. While others explain and justify, you remain silent, and in that silence, you become a figure above them. Silence forces the world to look inward, to question themselves, to invent stories about you. Some will call you cruel, others will call you wise, all will speak of you. Their words, even when filled with malice, still keep you at the center. The man who defends himself fades into the noise. The man who controls the narrative through silence becomes the noise itself. He becomes the one whose presence cannot be ignored, whose absence cannot be dismissed, whose mystery cannot be solved.